Of my research in literature, language, and education. Today I would like to focus on literature in relation to language. So this will be the main topic. But from time to time, I will stop and I will ask you to go on Google Club and answer some questions. Today, I will show you later, but today all the questions are open, so you can go at your pace and answer when you're ready, so to say. But I would also like to tell you how I thought it could be fruitful to interact with you during the days to come. So today, my intention is to talk a lot, even though you are going to do things too, because I need to be important tomorrow. Because tomorrow, my intention is to speak very, very little. Tomorrow, I would like us to organize what I call a World Cafe. So for this World Cafe tomorrow, we are going to focus on literature and language and the literary canon and how the literary canon is unfolds in education here in India, or in your view, or in your education. So to prepare for this World Cafe, the idea is, so I tell you here right now, so you know what is to come tomorrow. The idea is that I will provide you with about 10 questions. And I would like you to more or less self-organize into 10 groups, or maybe 5 to 10, depending on how many people we have present here tomorrow. And in each group, you will assign a president, one person who will never leave his or her group, because that person is responsible of writing the answers to the questions. So then everyone in the room will circulate to all these 10 groups with different questions. So we will have discussed everything. No one will go home without having answered one of these 10 questions. And you will also interact with each other. And I will circulate and discuss with you. So that's the idea for tomorrow. And the day after, I will talk a lot too. And then we will move into generative AI, what generative AI actually do for literature and writing and reading in education for tomorrow. And I will show you a little bit about my research, my current research in this field. And then the day after, I will organize with you a futures workshop where we will create scenarios of the education for tomorrow. And there will be some kind of output of that workshop that I can share with all of you, so that you have something to take home from this course to think about. So that's about everything. But then there was this very enigmatic thing in the schedule that I couldn't understand what it was. It was called tutorials. So I asked Vibana what it is about, and now I know. So this is about asking questions also discuss possible answers. So from my point of view, my main activities right now, that is research. So if you have a thesis going on or an idea of a thesis or dissertation or so on, or if you want to discuss methodology, theory, problem, research questions, please come to me. I think that we should really use that tutorial time for that. Would that be okay? Or do you have other suggestions that maybe you know what you would like to discuss with me during the tutorials? No? It will come, but don't hesitate. You can ask anything. But just to tell you what I'm involved in right now is not so much education, it's more research, but of course research in education. So language and cultural mediators in Swedish language education. Okay, so this is focused on Sweden, but the idea of sharing experiences from Sweden with you is, of course, that you will be able to think about this from your perspective and from your different contexts. So here you can go to WooClap again, and then you have another code for this day. It's Ylva day 2. So then normally you should be able to reach the questions. And if you don't, please tell me or show me through some kind of sign. Okay. Maybe she put it there. Okay, is it better now? Yes, much better. Okay, so this is the WooClap link. Do you manage to get it? You see the questions? Yes, yes, yes. Wonderful. So it's up to you. If you want to ask an answer now when I'm speaking or later on. So I will go on. I will start to present to you. No, this one. The research school that I'm leading. It's a research school with doctoral students, but also senior researchers in literature, language, and education. It's called Culturally Empowering Education Through Language and Literature. And it's a national research school, meaning that it is the Swedish Research Council that has funded this. So these are fully funded PhD students. So in Sweden, a PhD student costs about 400,000 euros. It's 4 years of study. And this is the sum that we need to pay from the university in order to have one single doctoral student. So you can imagine that this is expensive. And that is also why we do not have so many PhD students. But on the other hand, you do not need to work when you do your PhD education. You are expected to engage fully with your research. So these are the conditions, and I think it's important to share this because it's very unequal. And I know that this is quite unusual in the world as such. But this is how it works in the Nordic countries. So we are collaborating across several universities within Sweden in this research school. So you have my university, I'm not owning it, but the university that I am affiliated to, Jönköping University. We have University of Gothenburg, Malmö University in the south of Sweden, Stockholm University, and University of Borås. So in these research schools, we have had some initial activities, and I don't know if you have had the possibility to go into the material that I shared with you before arriving here in India. There were different articles and questions that you could consider before coming here. But anyway, if you have not had the possibility to read that, it's not a problem. You can do it afterwards. But it has been so rewarding in this research school with the doctoral students. We have had workshops, we have had courses, and we have discussed the concept of culturally empowering education. And this concept is not self-evident. It can be so many things. So we really needed to understand, what does culturally empowering education mean in each of the doctoral students' project? We have one doctoral student working with mother tongue tuition. We have one other doctoral student working with post-colonial education. So in post-colonial education, and how it is represented in post-colonial literature. We have another doctoral student working with world literature and world literature reading in upper secondary school. Another one working with creative writing in education. And another doctoral student working with reading in primary school, and how that can be culturally empowering. So there are so many different projects, and we needed to discuss this idea of culturally empowering education. So the students, they wrote positional papers, and we created a special issue in the journal Educare, which is situated in the south of Sweden at Malmö University. So here we try to have a critical focus on culturally responsive pedagogy, and we discussed literature from, what is she called again, from Ladson Billings and Gay, who have discussed and written extensively on culturally responsive pedagogy. What we do here, the PhD students, during this period where we were working with a special issue, they raised questions about what culture is and how culture emerges and how we can observe culture, and also how culture is defined in many different ways. And also how education is caught in outdated ideas of national culture and cultural hegemonies. And we also discussed how to identify innovation with regard to cultural diversity in education. So then we got many valuable perspectives on this, and you can read about it in this special issue that you will find the introduction to this special issue in the material that I have shared with you already. So the main motive for this research school is to marry language and literature. So here you see the cover of a book that I have co-edited in Swedish, and it's called Literature, Pedagogy, and Language Subjects in Collaboration. This is interesting. Which languages do you think you will find in this book among the studies? Urdu? Hindi? Well, not necessarily. right? We did this book in Sweden, so of course, no. Or frankly, why not? We could have had these kind of papers in the book, but we did not. And why is that? Because teacher education in Sweden, when it comes to languages, which languages do we have? Well, we speak about modern languages. But if we are to understand modern languages, that is all languages in the world, perhaps except for Sanskrit, because it's not a spoken language anymore. But in Sweden and in Europe, when we speak about modern languages, it's English, it's French, Italian, Spanish, German. That's about it. So it's not so much. But this was actually an innovation, but because nobody had done that before, to speak about literature across the language borders. And I think this is important because I know that most of you here in the room are English teachers, but I suppose that some of you are teaching in Hindi or Urdu, or are you not? Do you ever, okay, does anyone in this room teach in Hindi or Urdu? Yes, you do. Yes, sometimes. Thank you. Yes, you all teach, but yes, you all teach in these languages. And that's good because when I read the answers yesterday, I saw I'm teaching English, and very many of you spoke about English teaching and not so much about Hindi teaching or Urdu teaching. But this is good for me to know. But what I wanted to say is that when you teach in these different languages, I suppose it's also important to have a literary fund that sort of correspond to these languages. And this is what we wanted to discuss in this book, how literature and language were coming together. And that we also could see that in literature pedagogy across these language borders, there were so many points in common. And I think that's valuable to reflect upon. Well, so in the QDLL research school, the doctoral students, they have their own seminar series. And it's called XLALE, Exploring Language and Literature in Education. And I invite those of you who are about to start their PhD studies, or perhaps are already in it, or maybe have finished, you can send an email to xlay.seminars@outlook.com and just ask, can I be included? Can I be invited to your seminars? Because they have really interesting seminars where they invite scholars from different parts of the world, mainly from Sweden, but also from other parts in the world. And that could be such an opportunity for you and also for them to meet you so that you can share knowledge together. And I will have you know, because if you want to start your research journey, you cannot do it alone. And when I say you cannot do it alone, I mean that when you start your research career after your PhD studies, you will need to have a network, to have people to lean on, to read your text, to organize conferences. You have to take a problem.
चार्जिंग के लिए
Okay. And then finally, we will move into what
कुछ ना कुछ खा लिया
you will reflect
इसमें खाने का
what kind of culture you have in your education context. So that's about it. So here in this slide, I have some input from my students. And I will present this teacher. And this is the code for our teaching work engaging from the know about movement. And then what we see from contrasting literature to culture, first is what they see and think about when they see world. And they can see that the West and the East come together, but they never spoke about something more to the South. And so From my point of view, it is the same with growth reading and reading. We have to that we need to consider in parallel and perhaps also connected and use languages and ways in our relationship adaptive. So we will look into what I mean with distant reading because it has a connection to my research. But I would like to say that what we try to do, what I try to do with the perspective teachers in literature pedagogy is to think about how to present a work for the students. Often these books are completely strange and the students, they do not want to read them. And you can have the summary on ChatGPT in 2 milliseconds. So why should they read them? In order to move into this book and actually get motivated for a close reading, you need to do a lot of distant reading of the book with the students to help them understand the context. Perhaps also images, because in the world of literature, there are so many words and concepts that you don't even understand. I think it was Wilhelm Seth who said that when he won the book prize, that, okay, I have read so much Western literature when I was a kid, I didn't understand the word. I couldn't even picture myself these different contexts and what the British people meant with certain things that are some the British. And I think it's the same also the other way around. So, for example, when we bring in African literature, which is my specialty, into the Swedish classroom, there are so many concepts and jargons that the students do not understand. So they can very well feel a little bit, yeah. Another thing that has been a huge issue among the Swedish teachers right now is that the Swedish literary canon is sort of in conflict with the world canon. What do we do with those different literatures in school? Shall we teach Swedish literature only, or world literature only, and how do we mix? Because currently, in the Swedish teacher education, I think this is completely so frustrating for me, but the teacher students, they start from with the Viking literature. The Vikings, I think that this is called, right. But we have the Viking literature, the poems, the sagas, as we speak, and then we go further in history, and we read about the Middle Age literature and literature from the 17th century, and etc. And the last year for the future teachers, then they have some works from a world literature perspective. And then there are completely new concepts for them to deal with that they have never dealt with before. And I think that this is problematic because then we have Swedish literature here, and you learn everything about that, and then we have world literature, and these two are completely separate. But world literature doesn't work like that. I mean, as my students say, it's a way to see how Western views come together. So this is the dilemma, right? And And we also have another dilemma in school and in teacher education. How do we choose literature in our classes? And this goes for language teachers too, because you have to find the didactical potential in the work, so that this particular work can actually help you to teach a certain area and help your students to reach some kind of learning goal. So choosing literature, that takes time, and we must share knowledge between us regarding those issues. If we find something, this works with my students, I will share it with my colleagues and so on. I think that is super important. But it remains a dilemma, because it also has so much to do with who we are. Who am I as a reader? And here we come to the fact that as a teacher, you must read. I mean, if you are a teacher, you will not read. Is that possible? If you are going to encourage your students to become readers? Or maybe it's completely unimportant to be a reader in the future. Maybe, I don't know. But today, this reading theory document, it is clearly stated that students, they should learn how to read in books and understand different perspectives, different contexts, work with identity building, and so on through literature. And not only through literature, also through films and other media. So all that is included in the Swedish policy. And then we have this idea also among the students that world literature equals post-colonialism. Do you think so? Well, this is a great question. Because if we go back to Joseph, he defined world literature as best these artists. Then it was actually only the best works in the world. Doesn't matter from where we got. It could be from Umberto Eco, Sweden, German traffic, as far as the works have an aesthetic value. So I think that's nothing to do with this colonial literature. If we look at world literature like that. And now, of course, we know that the literary canon has been an oppressive tool for centuries, for imperialism, and so on. So, of course, when we see that the world literary canon is expanding, we can see that literature from places that have been oppressed, that now live in a post-colonial era, are coming into the literary canon. So then we can easily confuse the fact that the world literature and post-colonial literature are two different things. But they are still overlapping. It's clear. Another thing that I want to address is the circulation of literature. The circulation of literature is paramount in order for us to be able to access literature of the world. So I was picked up at the hotel to come here today. There are so many names, so sorry I don't remember the name of all of you. But I also have because then I understood that there are excellent Urdu poets. I don't know anything about the poetry in Urdu. Who's not? I know this about the British literature, about French literature, Swedish literature, and German literature as well. But nothing regarding literature written in languages in India. So the circulation and translation, these things are so important, and also a dilemma in the world with the heritage. So we have discussed that with the future students at my place. And we have also discussed the untranslatable literature. What do we do with that? Exactly after a US scholar who has discussed this a lot. And I will tell you a story about untranslatable literature. Because I have been living in France quite a long time, 10 years or more. You have heard it. I was commissioned to correct and work with the translation of one of the literary Nobel Prize winners in Sweden, the Swedish literary Nobel Prize winner. His name is Martin Foss. And he has written a science fiction story as a poem in Swedish. So it's like a epic. It's like an epic. It's like the Mahabharata, perhaps, in Swedish. No, not Swedish. It's epic poem. And it's science fiction, it's about the future, and it's about what the people on Earth will do when it will not be possible anymore to live there. So this specific poem is so embedded in this language. So when translated into French, I can tell you it's not really nice to listen to. And it doesn't work. It's just not possible, because his language sings so much in Swedish. So I would classify this Swedish author very much untranslatable. And it was the same for another poet, a Swedish poet that got the Swedish Nobel Prize, I think it was a decade ago, Jan and it's the same. The French people, they couldn't understand why did he get the Nobel Prize. So that's about translation, and still you need it so badly in order to understand literature in a broader sense. So this is just an image from a very local place in Sweden, not far away from where I live, actually. In a very small town, a smaller town than my own. And then you have this graffiti image of these three girls with white masks. And it's interesting, I will read to you what one of my students did a reflection regarding this graffiti image. So I will see what she said. Here. So my student writes this. I was drawn to the concept of white masks that the writer François writes about. I think this concept is similar to the concept used by Judith Butler in gender theory, which is masquerade. I find the concept, the white mask, interesting because it shows that if you disguise yourself as white, then you become accepted and perhaps even celebrated. It is interesting when such masks are exposed, as they are sometimes very well hidden. This concept also makes visible the white norm, which one is expected to conform to. So then you must know that in my groups of future teachers, they are very Swedish in the way that they come from my region, they are born in Sweden, they know English, but perhaps not any other languages than that. And I remember that in 2015 was the first time when I received prospective Swedish teachers who were not born in Sweden. So then you see how different it is. And of course, this kind of homogeneity also creates a very strong role. So who is Swede? Who can be a Swede? maybe you have to show that you have 3 generations back in Sweden in order to be a Swede. So it's interesting that this teacher student tries to reflect on this. I think it's very important. So as you can see, culture in Sweden is something that we need to discuss, but it's also problematic as a concept, since there is an image of the Swede as very homogeneous, white, and Swedish speaking. Why? The reality is not like that. And when they go out and teach students in school, there will be probably diversity actually today. So I would like to speak a little bit about the concept of culture regarding this issue. So let's go to the Swedish subject as such and the development of the Swedish subject. So here you can see that the Swedish educational system, it was sort of implemented in Sweden in the middle of the 17th century. Progress has all over the world, and education started to become a democratic thing that we wanted to spread to all people because we wanted people to be literate. So that's why there were only grammar skills and language skills in focus. And slowly, in the beginning of the 20th century, there were these scholars in literature in Sweden. They wrote this national literary history. So here we began to see the most prominent works in Swedish, and we started to read these works in school. But then again, around 1933, it was the first Second World War, and during this period, there was a huge wave of nationalism in Europe as a whole, and also in Sweden. So it's also here that we get this Swedish literary canon. So it's significant, everything is connected here. But after the Second World War, we can also see that the idea of freedom, of Swedish as a freedom subject, was coming into play. And this is connected to what we were speaking about yesterday about transformative education. It's why freedom illustrates how we do not recognize in an instrumental way teach people this and that. We need to be there, create relations, and help people to be transformed in a holistic way. That is leader. And then we move into the 20th century, and the society as a whole and experiences from different life contexts got into the Swedish subject. And then later on, world literature in the beginning of the 21st century, I would say, film and other media. And this is, of course, a consequence of the digital development and so on, the media, their society. And today, we have a big tension between those who think that we should go away from the screen and only focus on the book, that we should say no to world literature and other types of texts, and only focus on the national canon. So these are the tensions. And I think it is a huge problem because we need both, right? So Swedish is not a subject that is completely united. And there are so many actors coming in to say and have their say regarding the Swedish subjects. We have the schools and their traditions and practices. We have higher education and how the disciplines are organized. We have policymakers, researchers, teachers, and very strong pedagogical traditions that I'm quite convinced that you all have and they are difficult to break with. So this is the Swedish subject, and now I would like to move into, I will show you here, this is research in Swedish language and literature education. And I would like to address how the concept of culture is used in this research. So here you see different points in time, and you can see then different volumes of this research that has been published annually. And the different staples, they illustrate different core themes of the Swedish subject. So I will tell you the main themes here. So the blue staple, that is about reading and writing. So research in reading and writing, that is quite dominant and dominating the research. But we can also see the yellow staples. There you can see literature pedagogy. But what about culture? Where do I find something about culture in this research? Well, it's only here and here. So in 2 volumes, I can read something consistent about the concept of culture. So I think this is also an indication about how difficult it is for the Swedish language and literature education to actually engage with this concept. And so you can understand that I really want to have a research school on this. But maybe you have answers, maybe you have worked better or in other ways with this concept. And then it would be good because we can be in dialogue on these issues. So, so here I would like to give some more precise indication of how culture in Swedish L1 research has been addressed. For example, in students' textbooks, here, literature as is seen as a carrier of culture and a means of cultural identity formation. That is quite obvious and it corresponds very well with the steering documents. And then we have teaching materials, and this is quite frustrating. There is such an ethnocentrically oriented view of knowledge, and also with a provincial attitude towards the outside world. So, and in students' writing, we can really see how students, they get excluded because of culture. And we have different writing cultures. So these are the themes, and we also have inclusion in core values here. Cultural diversity, uncertainty, and complexity create the needs for a more open and exploratory approach to knowledge and education. So I will soon stop here so that you can write a little bit in and answer the questions on Google. I will just take this slide to show you. It is my colleague Magnus Persson. I do a research project with him on the Swedish literary canon right now, but he tries to underscore and show how the naive culture, how naive the conceptualization of culture is in Swedish L1 education at large. So we ask, should school and education be means to achieve the good diversity, when diversity in itself, it is something difficult and challenging? But that doesn't mean necessarily to be something bad. But this is what makes us learn something, right? And why should comparison be made between cultures? Why do we do that? Is that necessarily important when cultures do not have clear boundaries? I think that sometimes we forget, like yesterday we were speaking about flags and festivals. And Diva said that, well, Sweden and the northern countries, we associate them with lakes. And when it's here, everyone around me told me, hey, but please don't get those, be careful what you eat it. Because often when maybe people are traveling in India, they go to other places, and they often go to they go to the family. And we forget that today, these are very blunt ways of handling our culture. This is really important. We have rivers, we have a chain, good for food, focusing time everywhere, so same respect, the Indian school producing science in the code and objects and so on. How can we say that we can become when our culture and our way and I'm sure the team that we can change the idea that is doing with this
That's
so how the Swedish Teachers Association yearbook and the things that they are approaching. The culture is never but we have the yearbook from 2019 here. But that is called global. And so I have myself written a paper in that volume, and it was about manga, about Japanese manga in Sweden, and the fact that it's newborn young boys to come to reading. We need to know more, learn more, and take the manga, the manga culture, and the graphic novel. And in the same volume, there is this woman who writes the global perspective of childhood, which also responds to that and making sure education identification with the center. So the idea is that we should respect the center through global education. So I think that it's I'm now it's also helping me. So I will have some things to bring here, and you can perhaps write some answers to the questions on this question one. So take some minutes. You can stand up. I think this is also good when you yeah, like both. So the blood circulating the window down the road.
Yeah, up there. ऑन करवा दो ऑन करा दो लगा दो नहीं यार वो बंद हो जाएगा चालू कर लेना चालू ऑन कर लो फिर चलो एक बार कनेक्ट हो जाए ऑन कर दो ऑन क्या सही हो गया वो कनेक्ट वो ऑन किया तो था चल रहा है
Now it's really good. Huh? Or maybe the sound is better here actually, when I stand here.
You can move your
No, but tell me it's better when I stand here. Yeah, but then, yes. I'll go here. Okay, I think we need to. Oh, that's very nice. I need to speak about these three concepts now. So we.
While doing this, you can take.
Oh, yes, I would love to have a coffee. Yeah, a coffee. Yeah, black coffee. Yes, wonderful. Yeah, black coffee. Great. Thank you. No, but I need to move further actually. Afterwards, because otherwise I don't know if we have time at 6 o'clock. It's so I would like to present you to some concepts related to world literature, just so we are on the same plate and speak about the same things, because there are so many ways of approaching world literature. So this will help you to get some nuances and understand how can we understand world literature from different perspectives. So let us start with the world literary canon. What is this? Well, it's a few works that can claim to belong to some kind of shared canon for all countries in the world. All countries in the world. Can you tell me one work that we share as a literary canon across all countries in the world? What would you say? Yeah, Shakespeare. I mean, I think that we know Shakespeare. I mean, I've been a guest teacher in Africa, in Burundi. I've been living in Tanzania. They know Shakespeare. Of course, they do. So that's right. So there are some of these works, but as you can see, authors from outside the Western world have gradually entered this space. Before there were Shakespeare, maybe Marcel Proust from the French part. But today, there are other works coming into this world literary canon. So, for example, Salman Rushdie, Nadine Gordimer, Mahfouz from Egypt, and maybe Kipling and Tagore, we can also bring them into the world literary canon. And the Swedish Nobel Prize have played an important role here, as many other prestigious prizes. But these prestigious prizes, where are they situated? Who are the people in these prize committees? They are in the Western world, still. I know that there is a very prestigious manga prize, and that is in Japan. So there are different centers that are created, but we need to keep that in mind. But what is interesting, if you read Damrosch, David Damrosch, he has worked a lot with world literature in education. And he shows really clearly how these works are coming in to the world literary canon so that it is not so Western anymore. And when that happens, other works that were recognized and prestigious in the world literary canon before, often Western works, they are coming into the shadow. So they are excluded slowly, progressively from the world literary canon. So there are changes going on. So that's about the world literary canon. But then we also have this concept of global literature. And that is something else. Oh, things were happening in. And when I speak about global literature, it's not world literature. It's literature that is circulating. It's the contemporary literature that sells well on the international market. So what could it be? I have given some examples here. You can also read Rosendal Thomsen. It's a Danish scholar. He has a fantastic text. It's not long, it's an article about how this kind of global literature is very smart. Because if you want to circulate on a global level, you need to adopt certain aesthetic features. And what is that? Well, you need to please an audience, often in the West, where the most of the literature is bought. And how do you do that? Well, you take references from a local context, not too many, because then the book will be too strange, just enough so that the reader will find it exotic and adventurous, exciting in some way. And then you take features from the traditional Western canon and marry them to this local context. And then you have a best-selling work that can go global. From the French-speaking world, I mean, this is my specialty, so I have taken examples from that. I don't know if you know The Elegance of the Hedgehog. No? And Colombani, The Braid and the Dragon. The braid is actually partly situated in India. So you can read it, but you have also your best-selling authors, Vikram Seth, Arundhati Roy, and Jhumpa Lahiri, I would say. But Jhumpa Lahiri might also be one author that could be sort of nominating for the World Literature Canon. I know that she has been there for discussed for the Nobel Prize and so on. So that's about these three concepts, and I would like you to take them and think about these concepts, and especially tomorrow when we will have this World Cafe, so that you have many interesting works that you think of when you think about these concepts. But I will also address third concept, transnational literature, that I find very interesting, connected to these former concepts of world literature and global literature. And I hope that you do not get me wrong. It's not possible to say that one work is only world literature or only global literature or only transnational literature. One work can be all three of these, depending on what the work is and how you would like to discuss the work, right? Anyway, transnational literature. It's the literature that comes to represent a country or cultural area through a variety of languages, often including at least one dominant language. So Indian literature, for example. Through which languages can we understand Indian literature? You don't need to answer it right now, because I will force you tomorrow to answer it. We will discuss that tomorrow, but take that question with you, because I think it's really interesting and I would like to hear your point of view regarding that. But I have given some other examples here. African literature, you have these African author, Hefwi, he's saying that African literature does not exist. Why is he saying that? Because when we speak about African literature, it's always through another language that is not originally from Africa. In French, you can read a lot of African literature, in English, in Portuguese, in Spanish, and so on. And I have also given the example of Sami literature. Sami What is that? Do you know what I mean? Maybe not. I'm speaking about the indigenous people in the northern countries, in the Nordic countries, because these people, they have been oppressed for centuries. And in the 18th century, they were not allowed to speak their language at all. And my grandmother, she was a Sami, and she never spoke a single word of her own language because it was not well viewed. And it's very, very sad. So this is something that is changing now in Sweden. And we are bringing up the Sami culture. And the Sami culture begins to publish their own literature because their stories and their voices, they have been oral. They have also been extremely oppressed in the Nordic countries. So today, here you see a map of the Sami region. The Sami culture doesn't. So everywhere where you see colors, you see different Sami groups with different Sami dialects. And I will show you, I don't know if you have a pointer here. Is it a point? Do I have a pointer on this one? Yes, okay then. Yeah, so do you, no? Yeah, yes, there, it doesn't show, never mind. You see the N, the orange region N there. That is the region where my family comes from, and they were speaking Northern Sami. But then you see all the other dialects and variation of Sami language. So nowadays, there are very little literature in Sami language, but more and more literature is written in Swedish about the Sami culture, about the Sami history. So we had this epic saga that was published some years ago that actually got a very prestigious prize in Sweden and won a literary prize. So that was very interesting. So here you have some images if you don't know the traditional culture of the Sami people. They have very typical clothes, and they are often having reindeers. So not, for me, it's quite unusual to have cows in the street, but up there are reindeers all over. So yeah. So here you see a little bit more of the traditional clothing of the Sami. It's very beautiful with a lot of silver and broderies and so on. And there is the flag of the Sami region. So they have their own parliament today and their own rights. And they are protected as an indigenous people by the European Union. So when we don't treat the Sami right, the European Union will be there. You must do this for the Sami people. So this is new, but here we can perhaps also see some kind of transnational literature building up in the Swedish and northern region through different northern languages. So now I would like to move into language and literature, and that we could see this as an opportunity for cultural distance for a post-national generation. What do I mean when I say post-national generation? Well, I don't know for you, but I suppose that you are very much on social media. At least when we were at Taj Mahal, I saw that you were a lot onto social media. And we posted a lot of things and so on. And this is also viewed all over the world sometimes, depending on where you post things. But what I see among my students, at least, is that they have connections all over the world through media, the social media that we have today. So what do national borders mean? Because in our everyday life, the national borders, they are not so important, perhaps. But still, they are there. But according to that, we might need in education to take a step back and look at this post-national culture that we have around us. And also seize this opportunity in teaching and learning. Oh, no, so, oh, no. So I would like to give you some images that could help us adopt a distant view on literature. So this is an image from a scholar, French scholar called Pascal Casanova. And in 1999, she wrote The World Republic of Letters. And it's a famous book. It's quite Eurocentric, but the concepts and the theory that she brings up is still worthwhile taking into account. So she speaks about this carpet as literature in the world. And she says that the superb complexity of a literary work could find its meaning through a range of regimes of comprehensibility within the totality of literary production in the world. And every work forms a pattern with a role and function that are revealed in the larger structure. And every work is a part of the immense combination of literature in the world. So if we look at that, it's a lot about interactions and interferences that we have between different works. We have imitations, we have references in works to other works, and so on. So world literature and the works in the world literature are connected. But I also would like to show you this wave as an image for what is happening in the circulation of literature. And this comes from Franco Moretti. He uses this image to show that literary production is like a huge wave, and it's a force. But this force is made up of power struggles and dominant relations and superior and subordinate literature and works. So how is that? Well, in this circulation that the wave is forming when works in the world literature is circulating and translated, for example. Thank you. There are power struggles. Which literature will come to the fore? Which literature will you receive here in India? Will it be the British literature? Will it be the French literature? Will the Swedish literature stand a chance to reach to the readers in India?
Paper called Scandinavian literature.
You see, that's wonderful.
I read that.
Yes. That's good, Viva. You give a good contribution to that. You should have a prize in the Swedish Academy. I will tell them. Anyway, there are many power struggles at different levels, because look at this wave. In this wave, there will be many minority languages and marginal cultures that will be completely crushed by the wave of production in English and French, the imperial languages. But at the same time, through these languages, we've been speaking about transnational literature, through this wave, the minority languages can also surf on this wave and get out in the world through English, through French, and so on. So it's a little bit double. But these two images can be good to integrate to get this view. And also when we teach literature and try to contextualize literature with students, we need to have this perspective so that they understand the importance of reading this work before that one, and so on. So these cultural struggles, I've been working with different concepts here, what it means. And I've been working in my research with translation flows and importation flows and exportation flows between the French language context and the Swedish context. So I have been looking at how translation flows from dominate context to subordinated languages are working. So for example, when French literature comes to Sweden, what happens? Well, it's important for Sweden to have this dominating literature in our cultural context. Why is that? Because we accumulate our cultural capital in that way. We have translations of Marcel Proust, of Derrida, and another important authors from France. But it's also a loss for the original country, because through this translation, we will understand the original work differently than what they did in France. And this is necessary because we need to incorporate this work within other works in our cultural context. And we will make new associations to other works than they did in France. So it's a loss. C'est un détournement, as we say in French. So this is how positions are shifting in the World Republic of Letters. And the other way around then, when translation flows go from subordinated context to dominant languages and cultures, something else is happening. Because then Swedish literature, for example, we have gained recognition through, I think, three things in the World Republic of Letters. We have been able to export our literature because of the proletarian literature that has sort of been the fund of our fine literature in Sweden. We have also crime literature that has gone worldwide, and it's very popular abroad. So we have been able to export our literature, but also children's literature. There's a lot of children's literature in Swedish, and that is translated and exported abroad. Yes, Strindberg, since he was living in France, so he's known, I think so, and Astrid Lindgren. Really? That's interesting. But Strindberg, he presented himself in Sweden as a proletarian author. Yeah. So he was the starting point for this proletarian literature. But we can also see when we export our literature, we need to adapt to what is called in scholarly literature, the Greenwich meridian of literature. That is, that we cannot be too strange. We need to adapt to a mainstream Greenwich meridian. But when we export, we are also strengthening our autonomy, and we can, and this is also strengthen our internal literature and our maybe more authentic literature in our language. So this is how I have been working conceptually with this. And now I would just like to present some results from a book project. The book is in French, so don't bother, but I will give some glimpses from the data. So we have looked at translation flows and reception of French language literature in Sweden between 1989 and 2019. So the orange line shows the translations to Swedish, and then you can also, the blue line illustrates the articles in the daily press related to this translation flows. And as you can see, there are very few critiques, very few articles, and there are much more publications. So that means that the translations from French, they don't get so much recognition in the daily press, and then they do not get so much attention in Swedish society at large. But there are, of course, exceptions. So I would like to look at that we have a look at two examples here, and this will illustrate how important the role of mediators is. And I would like to show you this example in order to make you understand how important you are as mediators. Because you are not only teachers, you are also role models. And maybe you're also writing yourself. Or maybe you are a journalist on the side. Or maybe you work in a library somewhere, or even in a school library, I don't know. So of course, you are cultural mediators every day in your life. And when we looked in our project into the profile of the translators in this data, they were all this: translated journalists, editors, university teachers, authors, artists. But they were not only one of these things. They were translators, editors, university teachers, and artists. So you see. And the same for the cultural journalists who were writing about the literature. They had also these intersectional profiles. And I found it so interesting to see that during this period that we were studying, Marguerite Duras, which is one of the most interesting authors in the French literary canon, she has actually 20 more translations than Marcel Proust in this period. But Proust, he is mentioned twice as many times as Marguerite Duras in the press. So do you see, okay, it's so easy then to relate works and talk about Marcel Proust in so many different contexts, but you do not speak about Marguerite Duras. Why is that? But this is just an example to show how important it is, or that we are aware of how we associate things to other things, or rather authors to other authors, or works to other works, when we act as cultural mediators. So in this flow of French works into Swedish, we can see that the origins of these works are quite diverse. You have Asia, USA, Central Europe, Northern Europe, Southern Europe. You have Northern Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, South America, Canada, and the Middle East. But most of them, except for France, they came from Eastern Europe. So here I would like to focus on Northern Africa, le Maghreb. And I think this is so interesting because here we found Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, and Egypt. And of course, in Sweden, we have a lot of immigrants from these countries. Right. But look here, if we see the orange line, that is articles in the daily press, and the blue line is the translations. So we have peaks here, you see? And that is when there are conflicts in the Middle East, in Northern Africa. So here you can see during the Arabic Spring, for example, around 2012, there are peaks that going up. So there are a lot of articles in the press. And I think there was a conflict too in 1996. So then that reflects what is happening in literature. So then they do this, they correspond socio-political issues with literature here. So that is interesting in itself. But the most visible authors in these flows are Derrida, Assia Djebar. Have anyone read Assia Djebar? Oh, this is a wonderful author that you must read, especially if you have one connection to the Muslim world, because she was an historian herself. And it's so interesting how she takes up colonial stories about how France was usurpating Algeria from, I think that she started to look at documents from the Middle Age until contemporary times. And she took up these documents and she made something literary of them and sort of a counter discourse regarding these documents written by French white male. So Assia Djebar is it is an author who is dead now, unfortunately, but I admire her enormously. Albert Camus, I think that you know The Stranger. I think this is also a work that we can say belong to the world literary canon. I don't know for you, but in Sweden, yes, even in Sweden, we read it in school, even in Swedish language, actually. Hélène Cixous, she was a philosopher, she's a philosopher, she's still alive, I think. And then Abdel Attaya. Does anybody know this author? He got very famous during the Arabic Spring because he was homosexual. He is homosexual, and he was speaking about his experiences as an homosexual man in Tunisia at that time. And in Sweden, that corresponded so well to our way of looking at equity and equality and everything that we have done in Sweden for gender equality. So even though he hasn't written so much, but he has really been covered by the press. That is for sure. But the most invisible then. So here we can also see that there are authors who are not mentioned at all, like Jean-Noël Pancracy. This author is extremely established in the French-speaking context, but he hasn't been discussed at all in the Swedish press. So this is strange. So here you can see the importance of mediation and that we are all involved in that and that we make a difference as mediators, as cultural mediators. So that is what I wanted to show you. Maybe if I can show you also what is happening in Sweden right now, because what I did actually in 2022, I went through all the publications from French language, in the Swedish Royal Library database. And I found only 80 publications by authors with a foreign background. So I had really to go to dictionaries and to see if this author had another background and origin than in Sweden. It took a long time, actually. But this 80 publication represents only 0.12% of the total production in Sweden in 2022. And among these 80 publications, I recognized that 32 publications were from the Middle East. And here I define then the Middle East as Turkey, Kurdistan, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. Okay? And this is interesting in itself because we can see that among these authors, we have really young poets and writers who are becoming established in the Swedish language. So here we can also think about a new type of transnational literature that is coming in Swedish. So I also did a complementary search to look for literature from Persian, because Persian is a dominant language in the Middle East. And I know that we have a lot of immigrants from Iran in Sweden. So here I found 100 publications in the period 2010 to 2022. It's nothing. I mean, it's not a lot. But the diversity of the genres was quite impressive. Poetry, short stories, children and young adult literature, novels, and these were quite often translated from English, so not directly from Persian. So here you see, for example, the first female Iranian author, Sinin Daneshvar. And this is so interesting that this has come in Swedish, and it was during the revolt by women in Iran, because they wanted their freedom, which they do not have today in Iran. But we also have Omar Khayyam, a poet that we might also say belong to the world literary canon, right? And then we have this author, Atik Rahimi, who has got a very fine literary prize in French. So this book, The Stone of Patience, or I think it's called in English, it was actually translated from French. And he's an Afghan author from Afghanistan. And also a graphic novel from French. I don't know if you know Marianne Satrapi. This is something, this is classic now. You should read it. And it's also a film, and it's a fascinating story about a young woman who is going back to her roots in Tehran. And she retells the story about the revolution in the 1970s, and also her way when she's in exile. She had to go into exile in Paris. So the original work is in French, actually. Yes, that was everything about this research project. And now, I don't know, have you got the time to look a bit at the questions? I don't know, where are we in time? Oh, I have 4 minutes. Can you give me 4 minutes? I mean, the questions on WooClap, they are there, so you can go in and answer them right afterwards. I would just like to say some words on this issue. Cultural mediators in L1 education. who are we? And maybe you are L2 education, it's not a big difference, right? There are norms and there are counter norms. So where do we position ourselves? Are we smugglers? Do we promote exchanges and create our own norms and circuits and channels and forms? Or are we custom officer and wanting to fulfill a dominant norm, perhaps a national literary canon? And do we hinder exchanges? How do we act as mediators? So these concepts, they are formulated here in Riksams and Mailerts. They are well known in cultural transfer studies. And I will also address the connection between culture and Bildung. So Bildung is, it's a German word. It doesn't translate so easily into English, but we have been speaking about transformative education. And I think that in India, you have many educational thinkers that could be related to the Bildung concepts. But on a very general level, it's not about memorizing facts and exams. It's about growing as a whole person, right? Intellectually, emotionally, ethically, and socially, so that we can understand ourselves, others, and the world. And this is something that we can do through literature. But today, we have challenges as educators with literature, since we have these very forceful, powerful tools, generative AI, who are conquering with the attention from most students. But when I think about teaching literature, I think about that Bildung must be double. It's a little bit like Virginia Woolf. Do you familiar with Virginia Woolf? She said that a woman needs to have a double Bildung, because she needs to know the female authors just as much as the male authors in order to thrive in an academic context. And that was then. Today, we are more or less equal, but it's not equal when it comes to the circulation of literature. And we need to think about that. If we are to grow as persons who are in the world and relate to the world instead of our local context only. So here I have given two examples. First of all, it's Mohamed Mbougar. It's a young French author. Originally, I think he's from Senegal or Cameroon. I don't remember. But he has a fascinating work and a fascinating language. And he's now translated into Swedish. And then there is this Swedish author who is also famous and very interesting in his approach. Both of these authors, they are using many languages within their texts, not only Swedish, not only French. Mbougar, of course, he uses many different African languages. Tunström, he's using Swedish dialects from the north, almost not understandable. He's using English, he's using different genres, just as Mbougar. So we can make many comparisons between these authors, even though they, from a distant view, they have nothing in common. But doing these connections in different ways, that is a way to mediate culture in new ways and see new constellations and new connections. I won't think about that. I would just like to show you, because I thought about building in Indian educational thinkers. And I think that Tagore, he is addressing the Bildung concept. when he speaks about that learning should nourish the whole person, body, mind, and soul, and Gandhi with his basic education for head, heart, and hand, and so on. It's a little bit the same idea, I think. And you have many others there. So I think that I stopped there with a quote from a French author, from the French literary canon, André Malraux. La culture ne s'hérite pas, elle se conquiert. Culture is not inherited, it is conquered. And we must help our students to conquer this. It is a battle. Yes, thank you. And there you have some references.
Thank you, Professor Lindbergh, for your compelling question. With this, we conclude the day 2 of the GLAN course on culturally empowering. Do you have any questions to ask?
Please feel free. But you have questions to answer. So I hope that you will do that. And tomorrow we also have these tutorials. So please don't hesitate. Gather your questions for that hour. And tomorrow it will be, I don't know how we will organize ourselves, but we will not be here. Now we'll be there where we can, we can move around the.
So tomorrow you have 3 hours,
Mm-hmm.
2 hours lecture, and 1 hour tutorial.
Mm-hmm.
So we can take breaks during 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
In a relaxed manner, we can have tea or continue.
Mm.
So during the tutorial hours, we can have questions.
This was difficult. Yes. 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 How strange.
We have that.
Yes, I have. Thank you. Okay, what is the question? Yes.
Oh, there is a mic here. There is mic. James. Somebody should come to with the mic.
I just have an observation. You mentioned that the literary canon has been a present tool. So if you could just elaborate on this.
On the tool.
Literary canon.
Yes,
has been a
yes, in a. This is really interesting. So I don't know, but this is a little. I could start with a question to you. How did you come to a literary canon in India?
Comes from the British.
Yes, but I wonder if it was not through the British Empire, because the British Empire was here and contributed to shaping the educational system here in India. I mean, I can see it on the buildings, and Viva has showed me all these wonderful colonial buildings. So from my point of view, it is the British Empire that showed what culture that was legitimate. And it was not the authentic Indian culture, it was their culture, their literature. And that was what was legitimate to read. So in that way, it was oppressive. And the same thing happened in Africa. And now I go to the French-speaking part, because that is what I know. So I can tell you, when I was a visiting teacher in Burundi, in Bujumbura, I interviewed the students about their readings. And it was completely fascinating to hear that they knew all the French literary canon, but they also were very well versed in an African literary canon, which has grown during the 21st century enormously. So having the, and then when we speak about double culture, this is really an example of double culture. And I still think that a literary canon is oppressive, but it can also be liberating in another way, because when I was in Burundi in 2014, it was the year when a professor there, Juvenal Ngorobanobuza, he had just published a national literary anthology of Burundian literature in French. So this is also strange. It was the first national Burundian literary canon, but it was mediated through the French language. So this was a way, of course, to make space for the Burundian culture. But at the same time, you have this oppressive language in it. So it's very contradictory. But what I want to say is that the literary canon is a tool. It is a tool to establish a culture and to say something that this is what we belong to, and this is what is legitimate. And this is also something that is happening now in Sweden, and that is why I have this research project. And tomorrow, I would like us to discuss it from this point of view, because in this literary project, we are looking at what the Swedish government is doing right now. They promote a national literary canon because they want Sweden to have a better cohesion on a cultural level, maybe because we are now not a homogeneous nation anymore. We have so many different cultures and languages. But then again, who are to decide what is Swedish now, today? So that's why there are so many debates going on, and we are researching that to see what kind of discourses that comes out of it. And these are power discourses of different kinds with different agendas. So this is also a very important message to you, I think, to be critically aware of what is going on a cultural level, because it's not innocent. Thank you.
Anybody else? Somebody?
The best part about was that you did mention Persian literature, which was translated, and one of the things was that you mentioned one of the first female authors who was writing in Persian. So while researching, my work is somehow on Persian literature, which is in translation. So while researching a bit previously, what I discovered was that many people do not know that the first female writers who were writing in Persian language were not actually from Iran, they were from India.
I didn't know.
So actually, females were writing in Iran, they were writing in India. So that is the thing that many people do not know. And few of the very famous ones were Jahala, and one of his sister who was under the name of Mafi, and name of Zebulisa. So that is different thing, but still, as a student who is working on Persian literature in translation, the problem I'm still facing is that the English departments across countries and in India as well are not ready to accept, especially Persian and Arabic literatures in translation. So I can see what the conflict is, but I still have not got my answer. So if you have something to say on that.
Yes, very good question. And thank you so much for elucidating me on this. And I hope regarding the questions on Woo Club about these issues is so interesting. I had no clue. What can I say to you? Why Well, yes, I know what I will say, like it or not. But I'm very frustrated when I look into language and literature research, and especially language and literature research related to education, because there are too many studies, too much research on English as a foreign language. It's only English. And it's so completely focused on that. And these studies, they never do any or make any connections to other languages than their own, as if English is the language that you must know. And I just hope that when you see this rich, too rich research literature on English education, that you just will tilt and be critical and be frustrated, and don't hesitate to criticize this when you take up this kind of literature. That is what I think that we should do. And also perhaps read Mufti. Mufti, he came with a work in 2015, which is called English. It's not English only, or something, no more English, or something like that. I can look it up. That is all I can give you.
Any more questions?
No, forget English. Forget English. That is the title.
That is also across. Yes.
Such a lost time. So when it was translated in the early 20s, the title was Remembrance of Things Past. And when it was later translated in 1950s, the title was In Search of Lost Time. So there were two titles of the book of Marcel Proust. So when we deeply analyze the two titles of the book, we think we surely find the first one most beautiful. For example, being focused on the word remembrance. So if we look sweet memories, then remembrance of things past. And then the next title, Such, In Search of Lost Time. So such, it evokes a sense of that you have to look into something or look for something that has been lost. So I find the first title more beautiful and more lyrical, in accordance with the spirit of Marcel Proust that he was writing on. Thank you.
Yes, I think you're completely right. I like the first title better than the second. At the same time, a literary translation, the second title, it corresponds better to the French one, À la recherche du temps perdu. But I agree with you, and you can actually motivate remembrance from Marcel Proust's philosophical readings, because he was, in that time, you had the philosopher Henri Bergson, and he had this enormous work on memory and how we remember things. And Marcel Proust, he was very much inspired by his philosophical work. And memory is everything there. So remembrance can vary because it's more beautiful.
I think the first one is more focused on the remembrance of the sweet memories and he's positive of when he's remembering the past. Whereas when we consider the second title, it has more a connotation, a negative connotation of I would say that something is lost and it cannot be regained again. Thank you.
Yes, okay, I understand. Yes, à la recherche du temps perdu. But it's this search for the lost time. And I mean, I think that the research, because he's doing research, he's really into an exploratory a research endeavor when he writes this work. It takes him 7 years. And he's doing only that to see if it's possible to write about his lost time and find it again. So we start with Marcel Proust and it ends with Marcel Proust in his room. And it's a fictional character and it's Marcel Proust at the same time. But yeah, a very good point. Thank you.
So should we call it a day? Thank you very much for your lectures. I would like to talk to the participants. Tomorrow, we have she has 3 lectures. So I think she has 2 lectures and then 1 tutorial.
Do I?
So, yeah.
No, we are going. But are you sure? I have 2 hours in a row, right? Yes, but we are going to have a World Cafe. So we are going to work in groups.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll do that.
Yes.
What I'm saying that after you have this lecture by me, and after that you have a tutorial. I want to club your lectures and tutorial at the same time,
Yes.
2 to 4, 2 to 5.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So we can have 2 breaks, tea break also, and we'll supply her coffee, and we'll be in groups. Okay. And we'll be meeting in Hospitality Lounge. So I think we will finish with her lectures and tutorials by latest by 5, before 5. Okay, after that, I'll be discussing with you. And so I have been listening to their lectures, the Mishra lectures and her lectures, and I will be responding to some of the issues that they have raised. And why is it like that in India? All these aspects I will take care of. Okay, like she just now she said that research in education, if you think of that, there is more research on English language. Why not other languages? So that these things are there, we will talk of that during my presentation. Okay. So I think we'll have a nice time tomorrow. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. As a reminder, the test link will be shared shortly in the WhatsApp group. You may attempt it by the midnight, but remember that it is time limited. Thank you all for your active participation. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow for the insightful day.
Have you got the response for yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much.
Right. Yes.